video, I'm going to talk about fractions, decimals, and percents. Fractions are just ratios that are generally comparing part of something to the entire something, part to a whole. So if we have something like this, and we divide it into 4 equal parts, and I know my artwork isn't perfect, and we color in one of those, when we do that, we would say, well, that's 1/4. Everybody's very comfortable with that. If we put it in a calculator and we divide, we also see that that's 0.25. 1/4 of a dollar is 25 cents. A quarter is a fraction that we're all pretty comfortable with. And if we think in terms of money, it's also a quarter is an amount, a decimal we're all really comfortable with. Okay? The third one is to say, well, what part out of 100? In order to get a percent, we do part over the whole, and then we have to multiply it by 100. So if we think of percents being part compared to the whole times 100, in this case, it'd be 1/4, which we already know is 0.25, times 100%. And we go, oh, that comes out to equal exactly 25%. Again, most of us are very comfortable with certain fractions and percents. Those are really worth knowing well. If we had something and we divided it into 10 equal parts, and these may not look equal, but we're going to use our imagination. And we color in exactly one of them, we get 10%, 1 divided by 10. We know 1/10 is 0.10. So we have a fraction, 1/10, or a decimal, 1/10. To make that a percentage, we need to multiply that fraction or that decimal times 100. So if we do 1/10, we know that's 0.10 times 100. We find out that that's 10%. 1/10 is the same as 10%. That's another one that's really worth memorizing. Now, you do not have to memorize percents in general. You need to understand how to use them. But there are a few that I think you should know. And I'm going to write those down in a little table. Fraction, decimal, percent. And remember, all you have to do to get a percent is take that fraction or take that decimal and multiply it times 100. So 1/10 is 0.10 or 10%. It's worth knowing all of those. 2/10, which happens to be exactly equal to 1/5, is twice as big. 2/10 is 0.20 or 20%. Notice 1/5 is 20%. Okay. 3/10, that one doesn't reduce, 0.30, 30%. 4/10 is going to reduce. 4/10 can be written as 2/5. Well, that's 40% or 0.40. And it's obvious when you look, 2/5 is twice as big as, 2/10 is twice as big as 1/10. Notice you go from 0.10 to 0.20 or 10% to 20%. If you can find 10% of something, you can find 70%. Find 10% and multiply it by 7, and you'll have 70%. Okay, so 10% in particular is a really good one to have memorized. We can keep following with the tenths. That's going to give us quite a few that are kind of helpful. 5/10, well, 5/10 is 1/2. 1/2 is 0.50 or 50%. 6/10, of course that one reduces, that's 3/5. 0.60 or 60%. 7/10 will not reduce, so it's 0.70 or 70%. 8/10 is going to reduce, that's 4/5. 0.80 or 80%. 9/10, that one does not reduce, 0.90 or 90%. And finally, if you were to have 10/10, if you were to color in every single one of those squares, you would have 10 out of 10. That reduces to 1. In decimal form, 1 is still just 1. As a percent, 1 whole is 100%. Now, that's a pretty easy table to understand, but if you're really kind of limited on how much you want to memorize, I'm going to suggest that you need to memorize this one. If you can find 10%, you can find 90% or 30%. Just multiply it by whatever. So for example, find 10% of 850. 10% is just 1/10. To get 1/10 of something, you just divide by 10. So 10% of 850 is going to be 85. Another way you can do it is you write this as a decimal, 10%, 0.10 times 850. And that's 85. Now let's say find 30%. And you go, well, I already know what 10% is. 10% is 85. If I want 35, I can just multiply that by 3. 3 times, and you can use a calculator, I'm not, but you can. And that's 255. What if I said find 70%? Well, I've already found 10%. 10% is 85. I'm going to multiply that times 7. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry that. 7 times 8 is 56. That's going to be 595. So you can see if I wanted 90%, again, I know that 10% is 85. So if I multiply by 9, 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 8 is 72 plus 4, I get 765. That's one way to easily find not only 10%, to find 10%, we just need to move that decimal, divide by 10, but also to find 30%, 40%, 50. Once you can find 10%, you just need to be able to multiply to find the others. Of course, if you're using a calculator, you may prefer to say, if I want 90%, I just change it to a decimal, and I multiply by 850, and it comes out to be 765. I'll get the same answer. So 10% is a really good percent to have memorized. Another one that's really good are the thirds and the quarters. 1/3 is 0.333. That will actually keep repeating, but we usually don't repeat that many places. That's 33.3%. So 1/3 is a little more than 30%. 2/3 is 0.666, and that keeps repeating, which is about 66, and we usually round the decimal up to 0.7%. And those are also kind of handy to know sometimes. Again, if you're using a calculator, it should not be a problem to solve. I also would recommend that you know that 1/4 is 0.25 or 25%. 1/2 is 0.50 or 50%. And 3/4 is 0.75 or 75%. Okay, let's just practice maybe some examples. Let's see. 19 students out of 31 made an A on the test. We're going to do two things. Estimate what percent made an A. And then we're going to calculate it very exactly. If I wanted to estimate this, I might say, look, 19 out of 31. We put part over the, that's approximately equal to 20 out of 30. That's 2/3, isn't it? I know 2/3 is 66.7%, or about 67%. Now, that's not exact. That's approximate. If I want to do it exactly, I'm going to use the formula part over whole. That will make a decimal when I divide, times 100 to make it a percent. So in that case, if I do 19 out of 31 on my calculator, let's see what I get. 19 out of 31 is 0.6129. If I multiply by times 100, I'm going to get 61.29%. Notice it's lower. It's lower because this is smaller. 19 out of 31 is actually a little smaller than 2/3, but it gave us a way to kind of estimate. I hope this helps you. with fractions and decimals and percents. Let's tell you what, let's do one more. Let's suppose a $125 purse is on sale for 35% off. What is the sale price? How much money do you save? And I want to say save, because really you're not saving money, but you are spending less. There's two approaches to this. The simplest way is to remember that $125 is the entire price. That's 100%. If I do 100% minus 35%, because that's how much I'm going to get off, I'm going to have to pay 65%. So I need 65% of $125. I make 65% a decimal, and then I multiply on my calculator 0.65 times 125, and I'm going to have to pay $81.25 for that bag. The other approach would be to calculate how much money you saved first. To do that, if I want to calculate how much money I save, I'm going to save 35%. I do 0.35 times 125. I'm going to save $43.75. So this is the sale price. This is the savings. If I add 65.35 and 0.65, that's 1 or 100%. And if I add these two, this is $125. I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions about percents or fractions or decimals, don't hesitate to ask.